other points to get around too. So what I'm trying to do here is, because we know roughly how each other feels. I think we're probably going to come to a compromise on it at some point here, right? It's probably, realistically, that's what's probably going to happen in the group. But there's a whole bunch of other issues, and while we're belaboring on this discussion of this 4,000 feet thing that we probably are going to end up compromising on and not do what Bruce wants, but maybe not do what you want, but maybe do what you want. I don't know what we're going to do with that yet. You know, there's other issues to discuss that potentially are controversial, and I'm just trying to get those on the table so that we all understand and have consensus on those issues. And then we're going to go back and we're going to deal with the issue that is important to you, because I get your point, and I kind of agree with you to some level, you know, on it, and I want to work that out.
Some of the frustration is, maybe 3 or 4 meetings ago, I thought we had an agreement to keep 4,000 feet.
Well, yes, we did. Dave is right. 3 or 4 meetings ago,
we had an agreement, and then all of a sudden, Mr. Hessler, who does not live here, but he is a respected engineer, and I respect him based on what I've read about him. But now all of a sudden, we've moved the goalpost.
Dave's point is valid, because we did publish that. We did change the sound standards around and change the measurement techniques around, and do a number and publish a number of issues about that, and have discussions about that. What did happen, you know, the only other time that this distance thing came up was way back in the beginning, either in January or early February. We were talking about sound. I brought out on the table as just parenthetically, I was almost like, I mean, I just threw it out there as just kind of like I wasn't thinking that Dave was ever going to come back and say this. I threw it out there one night that we shouldn't even have distances at all. It's ridiculous. We should only go with sound. And I got a lot of sneers and looks and things like that, and laughs. I was expecting that. I only threw it out there, you know, just in jest, half as just a thing. I didn't have any idea that in April that Dave was going to end up writing a formal letter and making that recommendation. That didn't dawn on me at the time. If I would have thought that was going to come, I probably wouldn't have said it in the first place. That was the only other time it came up. But you're right. In terms of all the writings that came through, we kept working on this 4,000 feet thing, and the biggest things that we're making changes in were the way we did the tests, the standards we were picked because we wanted to pick standards we could use. We talked a lot about the DVC minus DBA. We talked a lot about, you know, whether or not low frequency was an issue or not. Those things were all true. The 4,000 feet thing stayed constant all the way through until basically the past couple days, and then, you know, Bruce put this. We got the letter last week saying it wasn't, you know, we didn't need to do the distance, and then Bruce published this thing today. So, you know, if you look at it from Dave's perspective, Bruce, you know, Dave has a good point.
Yeah, okay. In the first place, people have been arguing consistently about protecting at property lines or protecting at distance, and they want everything. A certain group wants everything. And in trying to balance property rights, you've got to have some sort of a compromise. That was the first thought. Personally, I never thought that a professional would come out and say, forget the distance, because everybody's been harping on the distance. But when you look at it, in fact, I think it was Paula, and I was looking for the document here, but haven't helped me find it in short notice, where she had a whole list of the setback distances all over the world. They're all over the place. There's a whole bunch of places in Europe and other places, it's 500 meters, that's 1,500 feet. There are as many that are under 2,000 feet as there are over.
That doesn't make it right.
It doesn't necessarily. But that's where you start getting down to, it's a matter of opinion.
Okay, all right, but is there, now just to kind of, to keep moving through the discussion, is there a compromise number that you guys can come up with, or anybody can throw out there? Is it 2,500 feet, is it 3,000 feet, is it 3,500 feet? I don't know. I mean, are there compromises that people are open to?
Well, first of all, why not leave it? It does no harm to leave it as it is. There's no pending out.
And even if there was, it really would be irrelevant.
And, you know, it is a living document based on, you know, it can be changed down the road. But I think it's a bitter pill for the town to swallow as a whole. Is if you went from 4,000, the town went from 4,000 feet, and X decibels to just X decibels, and people ask the question, how far is that gonna be from my house? And you can't answer the question without bringing in an engineer to do some kind of studies. I think that's kind of, maybe that's an oversimplification, maybe I don't understand the issue as well, but it's more palatable to the town if you have a distance and a sound. It's a safety margin. And even the studies kind of are all over the map in some respects. And there's no evidence of blah, blah, blah. Well, that's fine, but it gives the town more assurances that we're looking out for their interest as well as the...
I don't have any problem either way, but the compromise word is the right one to be using, so somewhere between 0 and 4,000, or go to 4,000.
I'm against property line being the determinant, mainly because just looking at my own situation, it could be 300 feet plus whatever the standout, or it could be 3,000 feet, and just because of the placement of my house. But if you go with a sensitive receptor, that's kind of the common constant that, that to me might be more fair.
See, now, I mean, it's kind of interesting because there's definitely a group that wants another property line.
Well, everybody's
So,
opinion, but in
I know, so, okay, but kind of to use your words, I mean, again, this is just discussion here, okay? So it's a bitter pill to swallow to think that there's an opportunity to protect property lines, and just academics again. It's a bitter pill to swallow to think about the fact that we can protect property lines, at a pretty low level, but instead we're just going to arbitrarily throw a distance out there when we could be protecting property lines, making sure that bad things don't happen.
People can wrap their hands around a distance. They can't wrap their hands around 35 decibels.
Well, it's 35 decibels at sensitive receptors. That's done.
But at least, okay, how far is it going to be from person X's house? That's the question you're going to ask. How far is it going to be from my house?
From
That's
person.
where they stick a map up and they say,
Well,
this is
I know, Bruce, and the thing is the hard part is, I mean, it's the hard part for people like you and me to swallow, but it's a reality, Bill, is that everybody isn't going to go out there and take a scale and a map, and they might not have the mathematical skills or whatever that you and I had a chance to be trained in or whatever.
We can put it
And
in,
you can't
but
expect
it is
them
one of those, it's a useless thing to put in. It's political, it has nothing to do with
But
it.
what harm does it
Well,
do?
right, you
But what
do get
good
that.
does it do?
Well,
Number one, it shows you're further away, okay? Once again, I
Let's
understand
put it
that
this
this is
way.
like we're talking about future
When it
projects.
when
up
it comes
front.
to a neighbor, let's say there was gonna be a dance hall, I really don't care how close they got it to my house. I care about how loud it is at 11 o'clock at night.
Well, that's another whole
But property lines, is such an arbitrary thing, because mine, as I said, it could be 300 feet or it could be 3,000.
What if we took out what if, just because I don't see any compromise words going back and forth here at all, just to throw something out there, to throw it into the mix. Okay, so, because I think one concession has been that there's no more 5 decibel excursions. Okay, I think 5 decibel excursions basically tell somebody that they're going to get punished by a wind turbine because they live in a potentially noisy place sometimes. Okay, so that's a message that that's in. So the fact that we're taking the 5 decibel excursion now, I think that's definitely a good
That's a good thing.
That's a good
And
thing.
we're taking nicer contour maps out, as
Well-
far as from the developer side.
Right. We in the back of my mind, I think that we should, take the tone penalties out, because the tone penalties are adding 5 decibels to it, and most of the new turbines don't create tones anyway, and you could just say you have to prove your turbine doesn't have tones and don't have a tone penalty, but we have a tone penalty which adds another 5 decibels to the problem. Do you see what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, and I'm not an engineer, and you guys have certainly studied this a lot more than I have, and have a history of working all these issues over the past several years, and I respect that. All I'm saying is, we appear from an outsider, a newly arrived person coming in, it gives the appearance that you're changing the goalpost, and I think it's going to be a hard sell to the community. It doesn't do any harm right now. If we put a 4,000-foot barrier in there, just like it was before, it doesn't harm a thing. And it can be changed in the future based on new engineering, new technologies, and all that. We're not locked into it for the next 20 years. It can be changed next year if we wanted to.
Just leave the 4,000 foot in there, that's just a number that everybody's gonna deal with.
4,000 feet to sensitive receptors, we just stick that one line back in. It's not that big a deal, it's just that, you know, we're trying to make an ordinance that can't be challenged on arbitrary measures.
We can stick it in, I mean, you can push it back in there. I mean, to be honest with you, I wish we could figure out a way of demonstrating that the excursion limit was worth something.
Okay,
But, I mean, if it can't be done, it can't be done.
Well, I'm only one vote here, I mean.
Well, no, I know, but I mean, the thing is you know, one of the good things about having you on the board is you didn't have to suffer through, you know, a lot of the pain from before or whatever. So you're not, you know, you're not coming at it from the perspective of some of that, which is good. We need that because that's not, you know, necessarily it's hard to get past some of that stuff, and you're helping us get past some of that. So that's a good thing. Okay, and plus the other thing is you didn't get brought up around here. That's another good thing. So, you know, it's not like you're connected and all this other business. The little things that tend to cause problems in little towns. So, you know, that's not a good thing. And you're fairly well educated and trained, and you've had a lot of experience working on, you know, some substantive work in your life. So, I mean, these are all things that you bring. So your opinion is important.
okay.
Plus, the one other part about that is, we've now created something that's different between the small ones and the big ones that can be brought up again.
Okay, why don't we do
True. I didn't think of that.
okay.
The idea was try to be even-handed.
Okay.
Can
Go ahead, Carol.
can I throw something up there?
Yeah.
Why don't we just think, I'm not siding on your side, your side, your side. Why don't we just think about the 4,000 foot until next week? And then we'll come back with a, you know, because this was a new thing just thrown in there tonight, was the 4,000 foot. You know, removing it or leaving it in there or whatnot.
Well, in essence of getting it done or whatever, okay, I mean, you know, Dave's point is pretty valid. It doesn't do any harm. It's not harming anything at the moment to put 4,000 feet in there,
No,
you know, and, you know, it can always be changed in the future. It's not gonna have to a sensitive receptor. It's not gonna change anything, you know? I mean, and, I don't know, I mean, just to not be,
It was always a totally arbitrary thing back when,
I know. I would like to get rid of it because I hate stuff that I can't defend,
yeah.
except for just
And-
my politics.
And unfortunately, it is indefensible on technical grounds.
I understand what he's saying. He's
Oh,
saying.
I do.
But, you know, and it's just like the retroactive part. I, as a general rule, do not like retroactivity. I just plain don't like it. However, first we received a petition, so I wrote it in here, whether it's voted on by the board or not. But also, that's pretty much what the judge told us to do. If you read between, I would say, some people would disagree, between the lines where he said, you can't do this, change it.
Yes.
And town after town has done exactly that when they've made a mistake. And we made a mistake.
So can you send me I don't want the whole articles, I just want the section 7 and section 8 rewritten. Or whatever, you know, the small wind and the big wind.
Yeah,
Okay, rewritten to incorporate, you know, what we talked about tonight in terms of, I mean, can we just put 4,000 feet in there? I mean,
yeah, it just means adding one line back in, because that was,
are you gonna have heartburn to put 4,000 feet back in,
No, no.
Vern?
I
I'm
mean,
not
the only
taking
place,
wind.
the only place
So-
the 4,000 people are gonna go in is 2 cents a percent.
But I mean, to me, I think it's valuable to have a discussion
This
about
isn't
it.
win-lose, this is what's invested.
No, I know, it's just been a long
I
time.
thought, yeah, it's been a long meeting, but I thought 4,000 feet several weeks ago was.
Well, you have a point, and I do agree that you have a point. So let's just get the 4,000 feet back in there.
For sensitive receptors. But see, before, when we were discussing 4,000 feet, we were discussing sound limits before and beyond. We actually were never even discussing the part about sensitive receptors at that time.
And there's a big push from property lines, okay? People, you know, or whatever. So we were trying to figure out, you know, in a different way, in fairness to Bruce, okay, and coming up with something, trying to figure out how to address people who are concerned about, well, I want to have a standard at my property line.
If I own 5,000 acres, but if, you know, you own 5 acres, you get 4,000 feet. If you own 5,000, you get, you know, way out there. I just think that sensitive receptor, which I define as a house or
A few other things.
is more of a standard. At least the person will know, at least have some reasonable assurance that there will be a certain standoff. That's all it is.
Well, this gentleman behind you bought a whole mountain himself.
And it shouldn't affect the current project. I mean, it's
Well, it doesn't even-
4,000, and things
Right.
should be changed. You know, it's just.
I know,
for
maybe
right
I
now,
agree with that, and that's why I do think that Dave's point is good, that, you know, we can't write up there in some of these responses to people about things, you can't write up there, you know, it's a living document, it's not gonna be, it'll never actually quote unquote be done, and then go, no, you can't do this. I mean, you know, you just.
Well, I haven't said that you can't do it, I'm
Well-
just saying it's not justifiable.
Well, no, I know, I'm just saying kind of the Reader's Digest version here.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't want to try to, I'm not certainly hope you don't interpret I'm trying to impose my will on this. I'm just saying, you know, it's
I'm
a
just
divisive issue.
I'm just gonna give you more of a hard time, but I'm not gonna, because you take
You
it.
know, you know,
Well,
it doesn't hurt anything, and it's time to, you know, let the court do its thing, and if it gets built, it gets built.
I'm
Maybe a
just
learning curve,
afraid we're
maybe
going
we
to be opening this up. That is one particular item that I think is litigious.
Well, I
It
do think it's
can be.
litigious, but you know what? I mean, we'll put it in there, we'll leave it in there.
Yeah.
I think all the other things, I mean, certainly, I mean, to me, I feel like we still are getting a lot of negative feedback after taking away excursion limits, after, you know, going even to still, are you gonna keep the 45 decibels of property lines or not?
Yes.
Right, so we're gonna go to 45 decibels of property lines, so there will be a property line
And it was
protection in there.
50 at 4,000 feet, so which means it could have been, on the 2 or 3 people that are actually concerned about that, it could have been 50 decibels halfway in their property. It wouldn't actually, because
Right.
we've already seen the map that says it's 32 at the edge.
Right, but the fact of the matter is,
It could have been, as people
there
said.
will be a property line protection in here, okay, and there is not today, and there will be voting for it, so, you know, perhaps, you know, some people who, like you said, you know, who aren't locked in on one level or another, will see 45 decibel property lines, 35 decibel sensitive receptors, 4,000 feet stays, doesn't go away to just sound only, no more excursion limits, operational permits that you can actually enforce.
And the other thing about that is, if you have a small lot, as we showed last week, you can say 45 at the property line, it won't be 45, 35 at the sensitive receptor. If you've got an acre lot on a pond, that's roughly 200 feet square. Well, basically, your entire lot is covered by that 35 decibel limit.
It's true.
But at 45 decibel at my far end of my place, for example, it's going to drop considerably by the time it gets to my house. On the other end of the lot, though, it's only 300 feet, and you go from 45 to 35. I think it'd be a
But as we
stretch.
showed, it takes hundreds of feet just for it to go 1 decibel higher. It doesn't just jump. That is the thing we can't seem to get across. It's just like it's just like a speed limit. Just because the speed limit says it's something doesn't mean that's what everybody. You don't when you cross a speed limit sign, you don't instantly go from.
So you're gonna get those like fairly quickly, right, Bruce, so I can get them posted so people can look at them and stuff like that.
All I do is add that one line. And
Okay,
I'll
add
send
the one
it to
line,
you.
re-look at the numbering a little bit, please, so that it's less editing for me, if you can look the numbers over a little bit.
Well, other than the reference numbers, the numbering and sequence.
If you can go make the reference numbers work inside your own area, it would be good.
Yeah, I think those
shows you
are.
notice last year.
Yeah.
Okay, the only other thing I'm gonna ask as far as people are concerned for looking at stuff, I'm probably, because I have been trying to go through and do the cross-referencing or whatever, okay? Now, if I can get some of these published that I haven't had a chance to go through and do all the cross-referencing on my own, if I publish those, we can't have 3 people do it, but would it be possible for you two to sit here at the town office, you know, and just go through and take a hard copy and put a line through and put in the new reference numbers.
I think
I think it's just easier to do it two people, because one can open one book and the other book, and,
we'll need the original too.
well, right, just bring your original ordinance and you'll have the copies with the old numbering system in it for the sections I haven't been able to do yet, because that's just very, very tedious.
So we'll start with one and work through that.
Right, well, I've already done, I think, like, all the way, most of the way through 9.
But do you want, where do you want to check those or start?
No, just started the new ones. I've double checked the ones that I've done. Not saying I didn't,
No, I'm saying,
because Paul made mistakes too. Just to
No.
make sure.
no.
Okay, so are we done our part? I'll let you know when that can be done, and everybody's okay with those two doing it? Yes, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I need to have consensus here. So, are we done tonight for the meeting here tonight? I think we probably have beat ourselves up enough.
Can you go to page 1412? Because I don't want you guys to make one mistake.
The first one this year?
I'm gonna call your wife and ask her.
No, no.
Okay, down there where it says town zoning districts. We don't use zoning, the word zoning, I don't believe anywhere else. And districts we only use for resource protection and limited residential districts in the shoreline. I think you want to say growth management areas.
Yeah. Got that, Bruce? I don't know where the heck you got that from.
I didn't get it.
You know what, Paul, you must have written that in there before, and it's still
But
there.
I slipped it in when you guys weren't looking.
That's, I don't know where, because that
Every
expanded
time I
mapping has
see-
been in there.
Every time I see it, I go,
Yeah, you expanded that, well, actually, you rewrote that when you took the submission requirements out.
Oh, I did?
Yeah.
Oh, oops.
I hadn't even looked at that.
All right, if you can fix that, that would be great.
thank you for doing that.
Growth management areas, yeah.
You'll forget all about
All right, right on a piece of paper there. Okay, I'm just shutting these down while I'm doing that. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to say tonight? Get off their chest or whatever. Go ahead, Jared.
You talked about getting rid of the +5, et cetera. I'm wondering if that, and you mentioned keeping the 35, is that 35 LEQ?
No, it's 35 L90A.
Okay, so that is a significant change in.
It's significant in that it is, according to, first Hessler said it, and then I started looking up sources online, it is a more accurate.
Right, but as compared to LEQ, it would be,
It'll usually come in a decibel or two lower, but what it does do is it screens out high sound peaks from your noise in the area. So in other words, you're supposed to take barking dogs and cars passing and things like that. Well, the L90A, by using it, takes out a lot of that extraneous noise, because that's not fair to be counting as turbine noise.
but I guess in looking at the Beaver Ridge study as well as others, the L90 is consistently a minimum of 3, if not 5 or more decibels higher than LEQ. And I think that's a change that we should at least all be aware of.
You did that part. I don't have.
I'll have to take another look at all the numbers. It does come out lower, but again, that's because the LEQ is taking into account more extraneous noise.
So if the L90, okay, now I remember that. If the L90 is only taking in the wind turbine and not taking in dogs barking and trucks driving, don't you think it'd be better?
I'm not disagreeing with the use of L90. I'm just saying that by taking an LEQ 35 and changing it to a L90 35, we're in essence allowing a development at least 3, if not more decibels.
Well,
lower.
actually, that's not completely true, because if you read Hessler's, well, you have to read the critiques of it, but what it amounts to, if you take an instantaneous measure of sound, L90A, L minimum, LEQ, L max, and L 10 would all be exactly the same value.
Mhm.
But it's impossible to take instantaneous
Mhm.
readings because they change constantly.
Right.
So you take some sort of a statistical sample. LEQ is not looking at the sound the same way. What it does is it adds in more of these extraneous noises.
It averages them in,
It averages them in.
whereas the
But the
other.
extraneous noises are not what we're trying to regulate. We're trying to regulate the wind turbines.
Right.
So what it amounts to is the LEQA. It was pointed out to me, especially when trying to use the hourly value, that you'd be adding in everything but the wind turbines over that period.
I believe that Beaver Wind does use the LEQ in.
It is the most common one used, and they're now getting away from it simply because they're recognizing that LEQ is adding in too much. It's not actually measuring what you're trying to measure.
Okay, so background sound would also be the L90, or is that?
The plain fact is, even when you're trying to measure L90, some background sound is being measured. You can't avoid it because you're measuring 4,000 or 5,000 feet from a turbine. You cannot stop measuring it. But what does happen is that if you're outside, you walk, you have steps. But most of those are peaks of sound. L90 chops the peaks off, whereas LEQ adds more of them in.
Mhm.
Well, you really don't want to be, you're trying to measure how loud is the wind turbine. You're not trying to measure how loud did the dog bark, how loud did somebody walk by, how loud did that breeze go through the trees. So it's considered now the more accurate measure than LEQ. LEQ, if you were measuring in dead town conditions, dead town would be almost exactly the same as the L90.
Right.
And as it was put to me, all those values, as you shorten the time, collapse to one value. As you expand the time frame you're measuring it in, the different values start spreading.
Well, actually, the good part about L90 though, would be that you can enforce it, because if you have a, potential violation at LEQ, then all you're gonna do is get a couple engineers arguing over, well, those spikes were just from the dogs barking, they're not from the wind turbine, so you can't count those. Whereas if you use the L90, they're gone, so you can't argue it.
Yeah, and I believe that Beaver Ridge study does, if that spike is above whatever the reference point is, then they get rid of it. So that does in effect count for dogs barking or.
If it's extremely loud or extremely long, it is eliminated anyway, because then it even affects the L90.
Right, because it's outside the standard deviation by some number of levels, like 2 deviations out or whatever.
So otherwise than that, you could have someone go outside and start clapping and say, see how loud it is, because they just measured the sound.
Right. But.
I'll tell you what we can do. Maybe, Bruce, you can do a little bit more and get some words from Dave and kind of identify what that differential is in some sort of simple words, simple man's language, so that people can understand, what that is, so that when Jared's out explaining it, that he has something at least to work from, instead of, it sounds to me like there's some haze between the two of you on exactly what that means.
Yeah, well, the difficulty is it's extremely technical, and I didn't understand it well until recently.
Well, Dave's going to have to explain a little bit to us.
Right, because we're going to be adding up some bucks if he does too much.
Okay, well, anyway, well, maybe do some other research on your own too, but
Yeah.
I do think it's reasonable to have an explanation for it.
Yeah, but what you also found, if you looked at that Beaver Ridge, was at one of the sites in particular, they couldn't even pick out the turbine sound from the background.
Mhm.
They couldn't even get a good reading. And at 3,200 feet. Yeah, at 35 dBA, and our distances are usually at a mile, You know what's gonna happen for 90% of the compliance testing?
The lawyer said
They're not gonna be able to measure it.
for that one.
It's gonna be, we can't pick the turbines out, we can't measure them.
Which doesn't mean you can't hear them.
All right.
It means you can't hear them.
All right, anything else, Jared?
If you can't separate them from the background sound, then you can't hear them.
Teresa? You had your hand up.
Oh, I did, but it was back to where you were talking about
That's
retroactivity.
okay, fire it off real quick, we're here.
It was, when you're talking about the retroactivity in relation to the quarry kind of thing, really the moratorium is reaching only back to that permit that's pending, so whatever they choose to change in their ordinance will only affect that pending application. It won't change anything else, anything they've already approved in the past. So that's really as far as that retroactivity extends.
Okay,
So
all right, good to know. Anything else?
Yeah, I guess one more comment on that. It certainly makes sense to me why we would look at one land use ordinance or another land use ordinance. I personally wouldn't agree with carving out specific sections to satisfy a certain application.
Going once, going twice, gone. Oh, actually, one quick, just to the group here, we have these new, I don't know, you don't use a computer, we all have email accounts now.
Oh, I do.
You do have it.
Yeah.
We have town email accounts now with Clifton PV 01 through 05, and the central account is 09, because that's what we had several years ago. And we're only using those accounts for any of this stuff. There's no more personal emails.
So another, one of those.
So we get one of those from Debbie, you have a password waiting for you, the password. Yeah, she's got all that stuff in there. Give it to her, get the password to her, you'll be good to go, you can change the password.
We finally got Fairpoint to get it straightened out again. What a hassle and a half that was. We finally got Fairpoint to get our internet straightened out again.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
They still, even though they installed the stuff, can't get the, they still haven't decided what it's going to be.
Really?
Yes.
But
What's it been, 2 to 3 weeks now?
mine, they were working on mine for 3.5 years. Guess what it was? Talks about that, that they said it was lucky my fault when they were off.
Well, you didn't have one of those, oh, you kidding. You didn't have one of those installed? The filter?
Yes, they had the filter installed, but that little box that they said, you know, so you run the 2 phone lines into, that box malfunctioned. We had the phone, but we didn't have that other line.
Yeah.
We run the everything, and it still would work. They've been out there 3 times, they was out there 3 times before they got it straightened out.
Yeah, you
Look
have
at
to
the draw, I
install
have a
those
big
little
lot.
filters on every
Why they
phone
lie?
line.
Oh, yes, I've already got those filters
That
all
was the
installed.
point.
Right behind it.
That's why I was against or
But,
I didn't think that
you
was
see,
serving the best.
but they finally straightened out.
So you've got it back.
Yes.
Okay.
Because back, way back in December,